This year marks the 50 years since the Tibetan Revolt against the Chinese government in 1959. Many Tibetan exiles have held events around the world to commemorate the revolt. These protests occurred every year, but since the incident in Lhasa last March, fewer and fewer Tibetans are able to escape from China. Series in Tibetan in Exile, first up with the 50 year of Tibetan Revolt. March 10 marks the 50 years since the Tibetan Revolt against the Chinese government. It is hard to calculate the number of Tibetans killed by the Chinese military around 1959. The exiled spiritual leader, Dalai Lama, wrote a song to commemorate those who sacrificed their lives to fight for Tibet's freedom. On March 10th every year, Tibetan youth dress in traditional attire and sing the sorrowful song. As the years have passed, more people have died fighting for Tibet's freedom. However, Tibet is still not a free country they had hoped for. Since the protests in 2008, it has become even more difficult for Tibetans to flee China.
In the past, we would have 1,000 or 2,000 Tibetan refugees, but after the incident last March, China has increased its border control. So since last March till September, there were hardly any refugees.
Zha is one of the rare few that has managed to escape from China in the past year. He made it over the Himalaya mountains, but the journey took him 20 more days than previous escapees.
There are many troops and checkpoints. It's hard. You have to hike across the Himalayan mountains.
Zha declined to show his face because he is afraid that Chinese government will detain him if he ever returns to China. Zha is angry with the Chinese government's handling after the incident last March.
It was hard to escape because they killed too many of us Tibetans, and we were afraid to leave. What I'm saying is true. If you don't believe me, visit Sichuan and take a look at Lhasa. Every temple is fortified with guards.
Most refugees only have simple clothing when they arrive at the center because it takes almost a month to flee China. Even though most of the refugees have to rely on international donations, these Tibetans would rather risk their lives for freedom than live under the Chinese government's terror regime, especially those who have previously been imprisoned by the Chinese government. People who hand out flyers and own books of photos related to the Dalai Lama can be imprisoned for more than 4 years. These political prisoners have proof of release, but in fact, it's a mark of having spent time behind bars. In addition, after the incident in March 2008, people suspected of participating in the protests also face the possibility of imprisonment or being executed. For those people, it's more dangerous to remain within Chinese border. "50 years of fighting for freedom has made it harder for Tibetans to escape. But the struggle has made the Tibetan more determined than ever to free themselves from China's rule." TITV Weekly.